so mathematics reveals patterns that help us understand the world around us. It is a science of numbers, yet requires human observation to discover truths. Fractal patterns are a single shape repeated at different scales, observed here in a Jackson Pollock painting, tree branches, or the Romanesco broccoli. Research shows that patterns actually can help relieve stress. So when I sit in traffic sometimes, I stare at the cars in front of me and I'll rearrange the license plate numbers to relieve my traffic-induced stress. So in this example, if you add the first set of numbers together, they result in 15. The second set, if we divide 6 by 3, multiply by 8, and minus 1 is also 15. Discovering patterns can help reduce anxiety, which brings us to number sequences, a pattern of digits that are linked by a common rule. One of the most well-known and my personal favorite is the Fibonacci sequence, a numerical series where each digit is the sum of the previous two. So 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5, and so on. The Fibonacci numbers are nature's numbering system. They appear everywhere, from the number of petals on a flower to the spirals that appear on a pineapple to the scales of a pine cone. In this pine cone example, you can see that there are 13 spirals in one direction, 8 spirals in the other, and these are both, of course, Fibonacci numbers. So let's take the first few Fibonacci numbers and plot them on a graph, starting with a 1 by 1 square, then another 1 by 1, then a 2 by 2, a 3 by 3, and so on. Then, if you draw a curved line starting at the corner of the first square and repeat it in each expanding square, the result is this beautiful spiral known to many as the golden spiral. Visual examples of the golden spiral in natural phenomena can be found in galaxies, hurricanes, waves, and shells, just to name a few. So note the golden spiral is overlapping the photos here to demonstrate this point. Also keep this nautilus shell on the left in mind, as we will be revisiting it in about 80 seconds from now. When dividing any Fibonacci number with its preceding number, you'll see that the higher the numbers, if you go down the left side of your screen, the closer the quotient gets to the golden ratio proportions of 1 to 1.618, which is also known as the Greek letter phi or phi. These proportions are believed to be the most pleasing possible. But we can't talk about numbers in nature without addressing color. All colors are represented by a numeric code based on the Munsell color system, specifying 3 attributes of chroma, hue, and value. In building restorations, often a paint analysis is performed, like you see in the upper right corner, and it determines the color of using the Munsell code. So leaving all the mathematics aside, we know that patterns and ratios are important as they naturally attract people's attention. The phi grid shown here can help visualize the golden ratio and can be used in landscape photography to help build a strong focal point, creating order and balance within a composition. So there are many different points and lines on which a building can be measured. So a person's perspective does play a role when layering the phi grid or the golden spiral over photos. That said, it has often been taught that the history of the golden ratio is apparent in ancient Greek designs, like you see here in the Parthenon. People have discovered many outstanding works of art and architecture that respect the golden ratio. Leonardo da Vinci, for one, was well known for his intentional use of these divine proportions. However, we should acknowledge that many of these works were accomplished without the artist actually claiming their conscious use of the ratio. So finally, we're getting to Frank Lloyd Wright. Many have debated whether or not Wright intentionally created his designs using the Fibonacci sequence or the golden ratio. To me, this is a moot point. Wright was inspired by organic forms of nature in which these patterns frequently appear, intentionally translated these forms into his architecture. Wright had self-defined his work as organic architecture and had long been interested in complex natural shapes, which can be observed in one of his most notable works, the Guggenheim Museum. The design, some believe, is rooted in the Fibonacci sequence because the Guggenheim spiral imitates the nautilus shell, all calculated on the base of this principle. In many of Wright's works, the 1 to 1.618 ratio played a central role. Some examples of Wright's art glass designs that incorporate the golden ratio are from the Westcott House on the left and the Coonley Playhouse on the right. Note how the grid and spirals are repeated throughout the glass design. The Roloson Row Houses in Chicago are clearly influenced by Louis Sullivan and make up the only attached townhouse collection in Wright's career. They seem to be a literal template for building a footprint with a length to width ratio of 1 to 1.618 and a design that traces the golden spiral repeatedly throughout the buildings. Another way to observe the golden ratio is within this elevation of Robie House. The measured area spans from the far ends of the second floor roof. The distance from the left end of the eave to the exact peak of the top roof is 62% of the house. And guess what? 1 divided by 1.618 is rounded to 0.62 or 62%. The Winslow House provides us with a great example of how the fee grid fits within the design. So notice how the brown decorative banding fits almost exactly within the middle section, leaving the base of the house and the roof sections each measuring at 1.618. The golden spiral centers perfectly on the facade and is in proportion to the grid. Now we are looking at the floor plan of Unity Temple, which is, of course, my favorite Wright building. In considering the fee grid, we can see that the sanctuary fits mostly within the left side of the grid, with the lobby in the middle and Unity House on the right. The spiral connects the building beautifully from the top right corner of Unity House throughout the sanctuary. The symmetrical facade of Unity Temple fits within the design principles of the golden ratio. Note in particular how the golden spirals align within the face of the building. Whether or not these considerations were intentional, Unity Temple and the other buildings we've observed appear to have been built with these patterns and proportions in mind. So there has been dispute among mathematicians and architects about the factuality of the golden ratio being represented in architecture. To me, the most important takeaway we have is not to argue the design intentions, but rather to observe these patterns and sequences in nature and architecture and to find the beauty in numbers just like Frank Lloyd Wright. Thank you.